Welcome back to the No Matter What Club. Today we're diving into the life and career of David Collins, the Emmy-winning producer and creative force behind the reality show Queer Eye. From a small town in Ohio to co-founding Scout Productions, David turned a simple, radical idea into a cultural phenomenon that reshaped how the world sees identity, style, and compassion. Stay with us as we explore how Collins brought the heart, humor, and humanity to reality TV and why his work continues to inspire millions. We're also talking about sobriety, religion, and family, and the importance of reaching out to the LGBTQ plus community in smaller towns. Please help me welcome David to the show.
Gosh, I'm so excited to have you here.
Hey,
I'm excited to be here.
Welcome, David. I was sharing in the bio that you are not only a personal friend of me and Tony's, but a huge friend to No Matter What Recovery, and we just adore you and love you, and we're so excited to have you here.
And I adore both of you. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Do you want to tell us? Oh, well, first of all, we have Mell here as well.
Hi, Mel.
Hello.
And
Nice to see
Tony,
you.
Nice to see you.
my beautiful husband and the other owner of No Matter What, and we're so excited to have you, David.
Can't be as this is perfect. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else right
Oh
now.
my gosh, I love it. So do you want to tell us a little bit about you, your
A
story?
little bit about me. Well, yeah, sure. Let's see. Born in the cornfields of Cincinnati, Ohio. Truly, back when I was a little one in the 80s, when I was a little gay back in the 80s, I grew up in a little town called Westchester, which is right next door to Middletown, which, just for context right now, J.D. Vance is from Middletown, Ohio. I grew up right next door to Middletown, Ohio. And his book, Hillbilly Elegy, weirdly, obviously before becoming vice president, the book resonated with me a lot, like, because I'm the guy who, I had a mamaw and a papaw. We called it mamaw and papaw, right? Not grandmother and grandfather. It was mamaw and papaw. That's where we're from, the hills of Kentucky, my family. And I'll say, part of my story that also leads to the bigger was that I always kind of knew from a really early age.
Yeah, we know, don't we?
that little boy inside of me was like, okay, so this is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I was raised really, really strict Southern Baptist. Evangelical, as hardcore as it could get. 3 times a week, Wednesday, 3 times on Sunday, youth groups, the whole thing. And this part of my story is really relevant because there's a story I want to tell before we hang up, before we're done here. That is, I'm so used to living on Zoom and conversation. That's important, but I was 11 years old, and we had gone to the same church my whole life, First Baptist Church of Mason, Ohio. And Pastor Patterson, Art Patterson, would be up there just preaching fire and brimstone every Sunday, fire and brimstone. And I remember I was 11, and my mom, she was kind of a fashionista, supermodel-looking mother, but she loved to come into church late. So we were late always because she wanted to make that entrance. Yeah. She wanted to make sure everyone saw her, but she would also march us right up to the front and sit us right in that front row so that, we could be there. And this one Sunday that I knew kind of everything changed for me as a little boy. He literally locked eyes with me, the pastor, and preached the fire and brimstone. All the gays are going to burn in hell. On the truth, and he just wouldn't take his eyes off of me. And he just preached the whole sermon right to me. And I felt my mom feel it. And I felt the church feel the eyes come on me. It makes me tear up a little bit because I then... And this is where the spiritual woo-woo, wah-wah comes in, because I am, believe it or not, even after all of these years, a Christian, a gay Christian who believes. You go to church every Sunday. I do. Yeah. And this voice, clear as day, said to me, that man's not telling the truth. Oh. Wow. None of this is for you. Breathe and let go. He's lost. this isn't yours to be. And this moment of me knowing that I was okay came over me at 11 in a way that I was unapologetically a little gay me again. And yet, you know, it was the 80s, so I learned how to, hey, you know, if I'm a straight gay, if I sound butch and I walk
drop the
butch
voice,
and
like,
I play sports and all of that, it was okay to be gay. So that's who I became. But that moment led me to being 14. And at 14, I ran away to New York City. Yeah. Packed everything I owned, wrote a 12-page letter that I dropped in the mailbox at the airport because I flew to New York at 14 years of age. I had $6,000 that I had collected, was putting into a college account. There was a boy, he really wasn't my boyfriend, but we had skipped school and I got used as an example at this school because I was the good boy. I was in all these things and they were having an issue with truancy. So they expelled us for school from 2 weeks.
I got expelled from high
And and when they expelled us, he said, we should just go to New York.
You're like, I'm in.
And we're like, I'm in.
Yeah.
And long story short, he lasted a week and a half. I stayed for 10 months.
Oh.
My entire sophomore year of high school, I lived alone in New York City at West 48th and 8th in the Belvedere Hotel on the 14th floor in a little teeny studio apartment. And the reason this story is important is that I wasn't a runaway on the streets turning tricks. By the way, nothing wrong with that. I'm sex positive and we all do what we have to do to how we do it. And I got a job at the Yale Club for Yale graduates, Avenue of Americas. I was a bar boy at 14. I had lost my hair young. I always looked older. And I had also learned to live and shape shift as being older. And I survived, and I survived well. And I only really came home because my mom had a nervous breakdown. And my family just implored me to come home. The reason that story is so important is that if flash forward 25 years later, the height of Queer Eye, which we'll come back to Queer Eye second in the story, but to complete this story, I got the biggest honor, one of the biggest honors of my time was to become the spokesperson for American Express. And they asked me to come give the keynote address to the president of American Express.
Oh my gosh.
And they invited me, and I looked at the invite. I'm like, this can't be real. As I walked in to the dining room of the Yale Club, where I was a 14-year-old runaway 25 years earlier, I walked up to the platform. There's 200 businessmen in suits from American Express. I felt the blood drain out of my body, and that voice from that 11-year-old that 11-year-old boy heard, I heard the exact same voice, and the voice said, "Don't give the speech, tell your story." Wow. And I walked up, and I felt the tears pour down my face, and I saw everyone's eyes in the audience get really nervous. And I said, I'm just a kid from Ohio. And I told the story of the little 11-year-old boy who knew something was bigger and better. And I told them that I had been a bar boy in the Yale Club at 14, and everyone's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yep, just go ask Ruth Orbston. She's the head up there." And that full circle moment for me changed my life forever. I knew in that instant. It still didn't, by the way, stop me from trying to destroy my life 100 times over, because I did that on top of that. But it did come full circle in a way that I don't think a lot of people get to have such a, the gravitas of that moment was mind-blowing, right? I haven't shut up, but that's the truth of this story.
I'm really taking in what you're saying, because I've had a lot of those moments in my life where I it may be a place that I was really just at my bottom.
Yeah.
And then I wind up there 10 years later and I'm like, how did I get here? And what am I reminded of? I just got chills as you told that story.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, also what made me think of when you were telling that story too is that while you had that really amazing, important moment in your life, and 2 moments as you just told us, but there are so many little kids who don't have that moment. And instead, in that fire and brimstone speech or sermon by their priests, they're hearing something different,
And they're
and they're
destroyed.
not good enough. And I never dealt with that myself in a specific sermon, but with my Catholic upbringing, I certainly felt like every time I thought a thought that was impure, it was a sinful thought, and I was bad.
Yeah.
Actually, how before I want to get into Queer Eye
Yeah,
too.
sure.
How, when you look at like the rate of relapse, how much of it is pertained to religious trauma?
I mean, religious trauma is probably up there in like the top 3 things that we need to treat when we're working with people, especially that grow up in places, in small towns and cornfields in mid-America, or even in like the Bible Belt, right?
Yeah.
Like, even though you may not believe that, a lot of those beliefs are really absorbed, and people don't even know that they're so covert that they're just kind of living through them. So we do a lot of untangling on, what voice is yours versus what voice is of, a pastor or of a religious figure.
Yeah.
And helping people reshape and reframe their idea of like what a higher power can be and how it can work in their lives. So
I think for me, like when I got sober, I had a punishing God that I grew up with.
so many do.
Yeah.
And Tony and I still go to Catholic Mass with his family, and we go with my family. And there's still a part of me that, and I'm gonna get emotional because I've always been a mama's boy, and so like I really resonate with the Hail Mary prayer, and like I don't necessarily believe everything with the Catholic religion, but if I still drive past a wreck, I do a sign of the cross just like my mom did every time. You know what I mean? Like there is that religion kind of like ingrained in me, and I still feel some warmth and connection to parts of my religious upbringing.
Well, and also, I mean, for me, it's the ceremony that's really beautiful to me. And although I don't subscribe to a lot of what Catholicism means today, but I have pulled some of that, some of the elements that do mean something into my spiritual journey today as a sober man. So
The foundational elements are the core things that we find truth and trust on, right?
Like the principles,
The principles
right?
of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah, much like program, right? There's the principles of those things. It's funny because when you guys say Catholic, so just so you know how evangelical I am, Catholics were a cult. We're like, oh my God, those poor Catholics, the Catholics and the Jews, God bless them all. But that's how scary it was, right? Like that's the shift in the pendulum when you talk about religious trauma. Joe and I are so blessed to go to a place that is so powerful because it's a church/community of what we call deconstruction. So the whole thing is about deconstructing the Bible. And so our pastor gets up there and it's blasphemy if you were to hear it on the other side when he's like, so those belly buttonless Adam and Eve in the garden, right? But he breaks the stories down, but then he tells what the story is meant to actually be, right? And he explains why the metaphor, the analogy, whatever it is, this is what the Bible is trying to tell you. This
not
is
a
the
literal,
teaching, not the literal explanation of things. So for our community, it's the coolest place in the world because it's the first affirming environment I've ever been at. And so to have kids and we went through a lot of places when they were little because we were in early sobriety. Joe and I were in early sobriety with little babies, and we got sober because of God. I'll tell that story, but he and I were in a church on a Sunday morning, high out of our minds.
Where else do you need to be?
Asking God to please save us. And they did. Yeah, and they did. But then we searched for churches because we wanted the kids to be raised in a place that was safe and loving. And there were so many that were just simply not even kind of safe or affirming. And then when we found this place, it's just been such a gift because it's lesbian families and gay families and straight families, and the pastor's a white straight man and a black lesbian. It doesn't get any better, right? And we have such great community there. So that healing has been a huge part of my sobriety and Joe's sobriety, to find community where it isn't just always, it's not sobriety, we have a whole sobriety team at our church.
Yeah, nourishing. It's nourishing
It's
all
nourishing
of it, right?
all of it.
Yes.
And it comes down to community.
Right.
It's community. Yeah.
And that's and just for those of you that don't know Joe.
Oh, sorry. Joe, partner in crime. He and I met and in the dark, we like to say. We tell the story that we met in the dark. And but Joe's part of No Matter What.
Joe is on our admissions team.
Yes,
No Matter What.
He is. And I think when I get to hear him, when he's working with you guys and all that, it's so beautiful. Every single time, it just reminds me like that phone call's coming in, and you have him, of all people, who, lived under the street down here, at 13. He was the kid that got kicked out of his house.
He has a really important job. It's the first. He's the first voice people hear when they are ready for help.
Yeah.
And have the courage to ask for help. And Joe has such a great demeanor about him and such a great style about him, in his voice, and just this tenderness and he had almost like a maternal sense that he has.
Well, my kids call him mommy,
Yeah.
so there's a reason for that. Our kids call him mommy.
Yeah, and just for him to answer that phone call and be able to help people find their way into sobriety, I think is
it's powerful.
Perfect for him.
Yeah.
I love it. So first of all, hi, Mommy.
Hi, Mommy. How are you?
I want to, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about on this episode, and I think it's really relevant because we hear it a lot. And, when we are doing our looking at how we present No Matter What to the world, and we start talking about the word queer as it encapsulates the LGBT community, and if I think about someone that really changed the word queer for me, and my understanding of it is you and Queer Eye and when did Queer Eye come out?
Okay,
what was that journey for you?
Sure. Well, this story I've told 1,000 times, but it's a good one because for me, the word queer too, just start with that was, created innate fear. Your stomach would go nuts if you heard the word queer. And this is 80s, right? When I grew up. So queer and the F word those were just the words that you just would abject fear, right, would come over you. And that's the butcher I would get because I could, fuck you, yeah. And so, long story short, 2003, my ex-husband / business partner / best friend and papa to my daddy. Yes, it's a modern life in a modern world. Michael and I, we were the kind of largest production services company in Boston. And all that really meant was that when all of Hollywood would come to New England or to the East Coast, we would service them. So we would production manage and location manage and budget and schedule, and we would take care of Hollywood in the whole East Coast area. Really doing great. 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, everything came to a screeching halt. Business stopped. And I mean stopped. Like nothing. And I believe this story applies to so many things, even in recovery. When you're desperate and desolate and don't have anywhere to turn is when you either look up and ask for help or you figure something out. And that's what happened. It was the fall of 2003. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon in Boston. And Boston has an area called the South End. It's kind of the gay neighbors, the WeHo of LA, the South End. And they had open studios. And open studios where all the artists would open up their lofts, and you would just walk around and have a glass of wine and eat some cheese and look at art and maybe buy something or not. We were with our best friends, Rich and Pete, and the four of us were just walking around. And we were coming up into what probably was one of the larger main lofts for the artists. And there was multiple artists in that loft. And we had to come up this big staircase to come up into the open loft. And as we came up to the top of the staircase, this really awkward hush came over the room, and we thought it was us. Like, you're walking into the room, and we're like, why did it just get so quiet? And so we're kind of looking at each other, but as we proceed to walk even further, it gets even quieter. And as it gets quieter, all of a sudden, in the middle of the room, there is this woman just berating her husband. look at you. You're a mess. Your hair, those shoes, that jacket. What have you, look at you. You're just, you're horrible. Why can't you be more like them? And she points across the way, and across the room, over by the windows, are three of the most handsome, put together, styling men you've ever seen. And they turn around, and in unison, all three come walking towards this woman and man. And they grab the woman, and they move the woman aside, and they grab him, and they just start loving on him. No, look at you. You put your hair like this, and they tucked in their shirt, and they're fixing his belt, and shining his shoes, and they're loving, and they're really chastising her. They're like, ma'am, that is not how we do this. Yeah. That confidence breeds success. We don't tear people down. We lift them up. This is all happening to a 200 people dead silent watching this happen.
Yeah.
I turn to Michael, and again, I test everything to God, and I wish I had known this then, that I was simply just there as a vessel. Mm-hmm. But I turned to him and I said, did you see that? That was like Queer Eye for the straight guy. And as the words came out of my mouth,
it was a wrap.
That's it.
It all synergized, and it all came together. And Michael really doesn't get enough credit for this moment. He turned to our best friends. He's like, I don't know what that's going to be, but I guarantee you a year from now, that's going to be something. And I went home, and I had all I can say, again, this is my woo-woo, wee-wee part. I had written, and and I worked in production. We had done tons and tons of film, big feature films, but I didn't know what reality TV was. I didn't have a clue, not a clue, or what a format was. And I sat down, and I started writing. And it was kind of like automatic writing. I was obsessed with Esquire magazine at the time. And Esquire magazine had 5 categories: fashion, grooming, interior design, culture, food, and wine. And I took all 5 of those verticals and gave each one of them a gay and said, there we go. There's the Fab 5. Yeah, you get a gay and you get a gay. And I took Esquire magazine's 5 categories, threw them together, and kind of created a superhero pod of 5 gays that would come in to save the day, one straight guy at a time.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So why did you, so when those words came rolling off the tongue,
Yeah.
Queer Eye for the straight guy, what made you think of queer as opposed to gay guy for the straight guy? Or
Yeah. That's a great question. Actually, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I don't know why queer popped into my head. Because God put it there.
And but also because for me and you,
Yeah.
I was born in '69, so the '80s
were
are like
close.
my heyday.
Yeah.
I'm a product of the '80s,
Yeah,
I like
me
to
too.
say. But for me, whenever I heard the word queer before your show came on, it meant I was going to get beat up.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
Same thing.
Like there was a beating happening.
Here we
and it
go.
was
We're going to
from
get
the
beat up.
school. Yeah, I was going to be
like
on
a
the ground in my
slang on the
schoolyard.
playground.
Couldn't agree
Yeah.
more.
Being pounded on, not in a
on.
good way, by the
Not in a
schoolyard
good way.
boys.
Yeah.
And here you are,
Yeah.
using that word in a way that celebrates and champions the community.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something that people don't know. I remember very clearly looking up in the Webster Dictionary back then, queer, and it's a cool definition: a unique point of view, a unique a different perspective. And that's all it is, a queer eye, a unique point of view, a different perspective.
I love it. I cannot watch an episode without crying.
Oh, I know. It's a tearjerker.
It is. And and David, just knowing you personally and knowing your journey in the rooms, it has just been really beautiful to watch you manage a family, a huge career. I mean, we can't even, I don't know that we have enough time to even get started on Legendary. But what's funny? So when I come home and I see my husband trying to be Honey Balenciaga doing his duck walks.
Crying.
What?
Crying.
How have I not gotten a
Trying.
video?
Trying.
I mean, we literally, the pandemic and Legendary, it was just like a time and place thing. And it was
It saved a lot of people during
It
that
did.
time.
David,
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
I mean, and you also gave a voice to people that didn't have a voice, and that community. I mean, we were starting to see it with Pose and Legendary, and all of it was just so timely and so just.
I like to say they had voices. We just handed them the microphone, right? No one had allowed that to be celebrated properly, because that's why the ballroom community is so special, right? Because they had to celebrate themselves. Yeah. That's where ballroom was born.
Yeah, that was
out
the audience
of them celebrating themselves.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you guys, to this day, if there is something that we are working on trying to bring back to life right now, it's legendary.
I mean,
in
any
this market.
network would be so stupid.
So silly not to. Yeah. And by the way, if you're not watching Reverie, our friends Damien and Chris, who you guys should know, by the way, we need to introduce you guys, own Reverie. Reverie has the International Voguing League, the IVL, and they do it as a live sporting event, and it's really fun. It's really fun. The IVL, check it out. They have 3 or 4 specials up right now, but we're trying to partner with them to see if we can create a Netflix live version
that would be so
of IVL, so that you could turn on, I want to do a late night live event on Netflix at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock on a Friday night after RuPaul, she's done, right? Then you go live. You go live at 11 for what would be a sporting event, a live voguing sporting event.
I mean, those are something to see. I've been to a ball.
Yeah, the balls are a blast. They really are. But the word queer, to come back to that for a second, there's so many fun little things, not fun, but truths. 2003. Idea happened. I only knew one person, the whole business at Bravo. And this was well before Bravo was Bravo. This was Bravo owned by a little thing called Rainbow Media. There was Trio Network, Bravo, and IFC in these 3 little channels. But they wouldn't allow us to register in the state of New York the word queer as a business. Wow. So when we created Queer Eye LLC, we got rejected by the state. So you couldn't even have the word queer in a business title. It was Queer Eye LLC. And they were like, nope, can't have queer in the title. So people don't realize just how short of a window is that and look where we are now, right? Where everything's kind of getting erased. But the word queer has become critical for me as a dad. To learn and love and own, because like your boy, when I heard queer, I was like, all right, we're gonna fight. And now to be like, all right, queer works, right? LGBTQIA in all of its glory.
It's sort of like moving the needle a little bit, right? Because this was 2003 when the idea of Queer Eye came out, and I might be wrong. I look at Mel as our historian here, our queer culture historian. The queer movement, or using the word queer, is really just something probably in the last 10 years, I would say.
No, that's very new. Yeah, us moving towards that, adding the Q for questioning or queer into the alphabet soup, and the rainbow folks, that is something that we're reclaiming. Yeah. Right? And it did mean something very different, the whole smear the queer. I heard that on playgrounds, and I grew up in the 80s. And so for us to take that back, and I love that it does encompass all of the letters in the alphabet. And I think, I don't know, gender and sexuality and all the things that go in between, it's moving all the time. It is emotion, right? So queer, I think, allows space for people that may not want to be, in
a box.
Yeah, that's right. So it's
in
just
very
fluid, and it's not, it's outside of that.
Well, you may not think at that moment in 2003 that you're changing the world, or changing minds, changing hearts and minds in that time. But, with every little step that we take as humans, and, I guess we can kind of attribute this to sobriety in our own lives and in this moment. But every little step that we take to make the world a little bit better of a place, who knows what kind of a ripple effect that will have later on. Right. And one that you have had in culture and society with just the word queer. And now I can say it. Sorry to interrupt. Now I can say it, and I don't feel like I'm going to get bashed when I walk out the door.
Right.
Well,
it's
for me, a 17-year-old gay man in 2003, there was no representation of queer anything in the media for me to look at. I mean, there was Will and Grace was, on the air, but there wasn't really, there was Justin Guarini on American Idol.
He's gay?
Well, I don't know. His hair was. I lived for his hair. I was lived for his hair.
And then,
sorry, Justin.
But for me and David, there was the Richard Simmons, Paul Lynn,
Paul Lynn.
and it was
but they were
wasn't
closeted, right? There was
They were not out.
no one was out.
Yeah.
You know, the guys, the original Fab Five, really don't get enough credit for what they did, right? Because they were gay men being gay men on television, and for the first time, real lives. And you know, people don't know this, but Carson, as gay as he is, wasn't out to his family.
Oh, wow.
And Ted, gay as they get, wasn't out to his family.
Right.
So for them, it was a huge moment
Right.
that they were going to be on national television, and
Right.
and I think also it was a perfect storm of things that happened. Bravo got bought by NBC Universal. The show got canceled. There's a crazy story behind that. For a full year, it said dead because Bravo basically was going away, and then NBC bought them. And when they bought them, the one project that the head of Bravo, Frances Barrick, who still is now the head of NBC Universal, she said, there's something about this one. And she brought it over to NBC, and NBC aired it in prime time on Friday nights. And back then it was a huge deal, but we got huge numbers. And that's what really changed the conversation, because then America was ready to have that conversation then. But the part that I'm reminded of, the Fab Five then were still kind of masked and caped superheroes. They would fly in, save the day, and fly out. No one really knew about them. No one knew their stories. The new Fab Five, they got kids, they're divorced, they're this, they're that, they're sober, they're not, right? Like, you knew them as humans. The original guys, you didn't really know that. You knew they were just gays that came in, saved the day, and hit the road.
So while you were having all this success,
Yes.
personally,
Yeah.
what was going on?
What was
Oh, I knew you were going to go there. Now, aren't you supposed to help me on this?
No, you're
Aren't you there to hold my hand?
I am helping you by not engaging.
By not engaging. Just leave him hanging there on the edge. Yeah, you know, my beautiful friend. Yeah, it all happened. Michael and I had been together since I was 21. He was 31 and I was 21, and we were little babies. And I met him on a movie set on Cincinnati, Ohio. I was Jodie Foster's assistant on Little Man Tate, her directorial debut, and he was the most handsome location manager you'd ever seen from New York, who came and I like to say, you know, he took me out. He took me out of Ohio, and I moved to Boston and New York with him, and we really grew and built a beautiful life together. And I learned how to not be a country bumpkin all the time. And I still look at him today and say everything that is good about me, all of my social handles at Style, Taste, and Class, anything Style, Taste, or Class came from him. And it did, because he loved me for me, and he helped me learn to love myself. But
By the way, we love Michael. We ran into him at in the lounge. Where were we?
In Boston.
We ran into him at the lounge in Boston.
That's funny. But what I hadn't done is dealt with a lot of my childhood trauma. I hadn't dealt with the core issues in my life, and I don't talk a lot about this, but I do, or I did in the rooms, and I don't mind saying it now. But I was, you know, the victim of very early childhood sexual molestation, and it was dark and deep and intense. I was groomed and molested by a family member for a very long period, from 4 to 11, and yeah. When I think about back to there now, I think about, wow, all of who I am today was based on that. So I don't resent it. I don't hate it. I love it for what it is. And I learned, and what I've learned from it. But it was hard to get there and to take myself to the next step. What ended up happening, success happened. Queer Eye happened. Lots and lots of success with lots and lots of money and lots of free time. And I wasn't ready to hold that or handle that or own that properly. And I fell fast and hard. What was partying and drinking and smoking pot and maybe a little coke at night quickly became every night, and parties and events. And I was living in 3 states. I was living in Boston, New York, and LA for 5 years. I was flying in private planes all over the world to do things. And there was a beauty to it. It was fabulous, right? And then there was not. I fought. I didn't want it to end because I was loving it there for a while. But what I realized is that the darkness that I was trying to go to, or where I was, so painful, so painful. And Michael, God bless him, he tried to save me at every turn. He tried to save me at every single turn. Rehabs and IOPs and private sobriety guys. And by the way, we had more money than God at that time, so he thought money was going to save it. Money's going to change everything. We'll get you to the best help in the world. And we all know that that's just not even kind of true. Yeah. The best facilities don't change anything, right? It's when you're ready to do the work. And I had a lot of aha moments. I had a lot of pink clouds. I had a lot of moments of healing. And I think for me, and I look at my sobriety, it came in sections. It came in parts, and it built on each other. And each relapse was as important as the last relapse, because those relapses were critical to figure out why did I keep going back? What hadn't I really dealt with yet? And I do tell this story a lot. I ended up at a I called it sex trauma camp, and it was up in Jane Fonda's ranch, up in past Santa Barbara, and it was called The Bridge.
Oh,
and
I know the bridge. I know the bridge.
You're the bridge. Yeah. The bridge. And it was a 30-day program with. I think there was maximum of 6 people at the whole time. They wouldn't take more than 6. And they created that small group mentality where basically you're my mother and my sister, you're my father and my brother, and you represent everyone else in my life. And you really, through the sharing and the story of that, I had the most healing I had ever had in my time in rehabs there. And I came out of there, I think, not fully changed, but changed enough that I got my footing again. Yeah. And I got grounded and realized, I will say this much, though, to bring it full circle. In the middle of all this, I had kids. How about that?
Who are 2 of the most amazing children. They are. That just
they're good kids.
Well-rounded, just grounded, personable, sociable. When we come over, they talk to us.
Yeah, they know how to talk to adults. Yeah. They're good kids.
They're so great.
They are,
and they're just
well adjusted.
They are well adjusted. And there was only one thing that I really, and this is. Joe and I, we met in the dark, right? And I was so broken when I met him. But we saw this light inside of each other. And somehow or another, that light, we drew towards each other, and we knew to hold hands and to reach out for help together. And his strength, I don't think we'd be where we are today if he and I hadn't met. But where I'm going with this is, he and I made a commitment, or at least I made the commitment to him to help me. I never, ever wanted any of my baggage to be my children's. It's not their baggage to hold. Right. It's not their baggage to carry. No. It's not their baggage to even know exists. And so that's, if I'm to have a moment of like, thank you, God, that's the moment that my kids, they don't know a lot of this. They do know that Daddy and Mommy are sober. They know that Daddy and Mommy fought hard to get where we are, and that our sobriety and our family relation is number one and priority. But that's the one proud thing that I can say. The reason they're good kids is because I managed to not put my crap on them.
Well, you did the work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I did the work. And it feels good to be a bit of a chain breaker and to be able to say, like, you know what? in program, we talk a lot about our parents did the best they could with what they had, when they could. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I also like, oh, Mom.
But
boy.
you still impacted,
Yeah.
right? Like we say you did the best you could with what you had, but
Yeah.
like there's still an impact, even
Sure.
if you were doing the best you could.
Yeah.
And the impact, I
Yeah.
think that's what's ours to
Yeah.
kind of work towards healing on. And I love what you said about this too. So it reminded me of something Kathleen Murphy, who's my mentor, would say to me. And she's like, Mel, like the people that come into treatment, they are not the identified patient, they are the identified possibility. Like these are the people that are going to break the cycle and break the chain
I
of
love that.
generational burdens that are passed
Yeah.
down over and over
Oh, I
again.
love
So like
that.
it may look like the person that's in crisis, but you're actually the opportunity for the entire
For the
system.
change, the impetus for change.
That's right. Yeah.
Hands down. I have to say, I am proud of those kids. They're the best. That story where I was heading, where I was going with that, I was bringing us back sobriety.
About Joe and
Of just taking heed and pride in our sobriety and our growth and our healing and accountability.
That's right.
Is just, it's so freeing, isn't it? It's just like, I can breathe.
And I think that there's great value too in, yes, being the possibilities, when we go into treatment, not just the patients, but the possibilities. But especially when you have children or a child to, it's only human to maybe skip a beat and mess up.
Yeah.
But to show how you overcome that, I think is the greatest lesson for our children at all,
You're
of
dead
all.
on with that.
Yeah.
And so you've been that.
Yeah.
For them. You've been that, that inspiration, that hope, that,
Yeah.
so.
We just love you so
I
much.
love you so much.
It is watching so David had a really good friend who was my next door neighbor. So we saw a lot of each other.
We did.
It was me newer in sobriety. You were going through your shit, and just to see the growth and everything, I love it. Sobriety looks good on you.
Thank you.
It
I
does.
think it does too. Yeah.
It does, that smile and all of it. I mean, it's
Right?
like, we talk a lot here about the belly laughs, right? That we get in the rooms, and like that joy that we feel.
Joy. Reclaiming joy.
And, the sense of community. Right? I mean, when we were in our disease, we wanted community, and we longed for community, and we longed for, people that, lifted us up and had these great conversations, and that we were able to, kiki with and have all of this stuff and share successes with, and cry with each other when things don't go the way that they're supposed to. And that's what we wanted when we were high. And like now, for me, that's one of the biggest gifts of sobriety. Right? We all get, the cash and prizes are great, the promises and all of that, but like for the four of us to be able to sit here and have these meaningful conversations, and to be honest, like as a younger gay and seeing the representation and the evolution of the word queer, and there was something else, and I'd love to have you back, and I wanted to kind of talk about survivor's guilt of the late 80s and just kind of everything we went through as a community. And Mel talks about all this great pop culture and queer culture and queer history.
We should do that for sure. I'm a good
would
pop
love it.
culture fan.
I
To
love
dive
it.
into that.
But I'm just so excited. One of the questions that we ask on this podcast is, what's your no matter what?
I knew you were going to get to that. Well, I think it does kind of reflect back to what I was just saying about not putting my issues, my trauma, my fight on my kids. It's not their place. There's a no matter what to that. I think every time when I see no matter what, and I think about the meetings at no matter what, that's such a first of all, it's one of the greatest titles. Like, yay for no matter what, because that is that line in the sand. That line in the sand that allows us to say, like, hey, you know what? I've been on the other side of that line a lot. And sometimes I've slipped over that line and under that line and fallen and tripped. And
snorted the
I've
line.
snorted the line. I've had the line.
Pushed it just a little more.
Whatever the line is. But I love that I love myself. I finally love myself. It doesn't call to me. like it used to call to me. It doesn't say, hey, come on over here. And by the way, it does occasionally, but it's so different for me in a way that no matter what is my children. And by the way, kids can't keep you sober. By the way, I look you right in the camera and tell you that. I thought they could. I thought my children were going to keep me sober, and they don't.
But I love that you talked about the intimacy that you experienced as something that was really like a springboard for your sobriety, like that close connection. I really heard you say that. Yeah. And those relationships that we have and the closeness and the bonds. And
And I love that my ex, Michael, and I look at him all the time. I'm like, thank God you stopped trying to save me. And it's the greatest gift that this man who tried to save me for so many years, finally he got the help that he needed to stop trying to save me. And in him stopping to save me, I finally was able to be saved. And people don't understand that cycle so much because the partner, the husband, the wife, the child, they want to just help you and save you and help you and save you. And what they don't understand is that it's doing the polar opposite of that for you.
When we talk with families, that's one of the hardest conversations I'll ever have to have. I do a lot of family work professionally, and they're like, what do we need to do? And the first thing that I say is, you got to stop doing.
You have to stop doing.
You have to stop. And setting boundaries is one of the hardest things that a loved one has to do, and when someone's getting sober, and it's challenging.
Every time we're out, we had a 16th. Our girls turned 16 yesterday, and we all went out to dinner. And I always take a moment to honor Michael and thank him for him being the guy who broke the cycle for our family, and now with this crazy big modern family of ours, because of sobriety. And who knew that mommy and daddy, would be two crackheads from the streets here with a family doing it right and doing it with love and honor.
So to wrap this up, because it is one of the messages that I wanted to get with this episode, is David and I are both from small towns.
Yeah.
And I know that people in small towns, gay, queer, LGBT, trans folks across the country in small towns right now are really scared. And so there is a possibility, there are possibilities to stop whatever cycles that you're in, whether it's substance abuse or, some sort of lifestyle that isn't serving you. And there is a possibility to have a big, beautiful life and a community.
Without question. I think, I talk a lot, and by the way, I don't use the word hillbilly derogatorily in the sense that it's just to let people know, like, I really came from nothing. Like, we were, trailers and farmland and stuff, right? This was not, and there was another side of my life where we had a little bit of money, but the little small town, when we went to school, there were cows and fields, and it was, a little bit of a gas station and a church. That was it. It was teeny tiny, Midwestern Ohio. And that part of my story is probably the most beautiful work that comes out of Queer Eye. So from the original until now, the original, we didn't have social media, but we had letters, and I have boxes and boxes of the most beautiful handwritten letters from parents and kids and grandparents that tell this story of, like, thank you so much for creating a safe space for us to have a conversation with our child, with our daughter, with our son. And then just a fun little fact, the original Queer Eye, out of those letters, I would say at least half were from what I would call older gays who hadn't come out, were closeted, were scared, and for them it was just such a free thing. And a lot of them were in these small towns, little teeny small towns across America, gay men and women who, just chose to stay married or never get married and live in that small town. And they're getting to live their life now and tell their truth now is really everything.
I love it. David, thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
coming
Everybody, I
to
love
the No
all of
Matter
you.
What Club.
Yay! No matter what. I love you all.
And you know, if you are out there in middle America in a small town and trying to figure out if you can paint your nails or if you can, do that cool, fun hair color, like do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Amen.
You have a whole team
You
of
do.
people
We're
here
cheering
that are
you on.
supporting you and cheering you on. Thank you, and come back and see us next time on the No Matter What Club.
Yay!
Yeah.
David.
Thank you.
So good.